Rain lashed against the old wooden porch like it was trying to claw its way inside. The storm had rolled in fast and now the wind howled through the trees like a living thing. Inside the cabin, Sam Raynor sat by the fireplace, staring into the flames, a half-empty glass of bourbon in one hand and a worn-out paperback novel in the other. The storm was his kind of night. Loud enough to drown out memories. Dark enough to hide from them, at least, until the knock came. 3 sharp raps on the door. Not frantic. Not hesitant. Measured, he rose, glass in hand, and moved to the door, boots creaking on the hardwood floor. He didn't ask who it was. No one just showed up out here, not this deep in the Montana woods. He pulled the curtain aside, and looked out through the narrow window. She stood there, drenched and unmoving, her silhouette backlit by the distant lightning. A long coat clung to her figure like a second skin, heavy with water. Her hair was plastered to her cheeks, and her eyes dark, unreadable, locked onto his with the kind of calm that said she wasn't afraid of him, or anything else. He opened the door. She stepped in without a word. Water pooling around her boots as she crossed the threshold. Up close, he could see the steel glint of the pistol holstered at her side, half hidden beneath her coat. She didn't take it off. She didn't offer a name. He didn't ask. The silence between them stretched long and uneasy, broken only by the crackle of the fire. Bathrooms down the hall, he said finally. Towels in the closet. There's coffee, or whiskey, if you need heat faster. She studied him for a second, measured him, like a threat or an equation. Then she nodded, slowly. Whiskey. He poured her a glass without another word, handed it over, and watched as she drank half of it in one go. Her hands were steady, her eyes, still unreadable. You lost? He asked. No, running. A pause, then a half-smile barely there, but unmistakable. Maybe. Her voice was low, rough-edged, the kind you remembered after it was gone. Sam didn't press. He wasn't a man who asked for stories he didn't want to hear. He'd left behind his own history, and he knew what it felt like to want to disappear. If she needed a night out of the rain, she could have it. But something about her made the air feel heavier. The gun, the smile, the way she looked at everything like she'd already decided how to escape it if she had to. I'm Sam, he offered, finally, not expecting her to return the favor. She didn't, just looked at him over the rim of her glass, then turned her gaze back to the fire. The silence grew companionable, if tense. Later, after she'd dried off and changed into a spare flannel shirt he'd left out, she curled up in the armchair opposite him like she belonged there. Her fingers drummed against the side of her now empty glass. Lightning flashed again, and he noticed the small scar just below her jawline. You always open the door for armed strangers in the middle of storms? She asked suddenly. He shrugged. Only the interesting ones. Her smile returned wider this time, but still cautious. Then, I guess I'm lucky. No, Sam thought. Lucky people didn't show up like that. Not soaked to the bone. Not silent, carrying heat and hiding names. She was something else entirely, and whatever brought her here it wasn't finished with her yet. She said nothing more that night. They sat in the cabin as the storm raged outside, the fire crackling between them. Sam dozed in the old armchair, pretending not to notice how often she glanced toward the windows, or how her fingers occasionally brushed the handle of her pistol, just to remind herself it was still there. Whatever ghosts she carried, they hadn't stayed outside in the rain. They'd followed her in, invisible but loud. Sam knew enough to let silence stretch until it snapped on its own. He'd met people like her before, some running from the law, others from worse. You could see it in the way they watched the door, like it might betray them. He hadn't planned on company, but he hadn't turned her away either. By midnight, the storm began to ease, the rain softened, the wind lost its edge. Sam threw another log on the fire and looked over at her. She was curled under an old wool blanket now, legs tucked up on the couch, her wet boots off by the door. I'll make breakfast in the morning, he said. You can go then, if that's your plan. Maybe, she said, not looking up, or maybe I stay one more night. Storm'll be gone by then. Storm's not the only thing I'm running from. He raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Her eyes flicked toward him, gauging how much he could be trusted. After a long pause, she added, someone's looking for me. Someone who doesn't ask politely. Sam gave a slow nod, letting that settle in the room like smoke. Is that why? You're armed? She shrugged. I'm armed because I learned not to wait for help, and because I plan on staying alive. That, Sam understood. Too many people in this world didn't get the luxury of waiting for a white knight. They had to survive the hard way. He looked at her again. She seemed young but not naive, worn down by something. The way she'd taken the whiskey, the way she kept checking shadows. It wasn't fear. It was calculation. "You got a name?" he asked, not expecting an answer. She hesitated, then said, "Call me Riley." He knew it wasn't real. It was too quick, too clean. But it would do. "All right, Riley. You got enemies. You might have just led them to my front door." "If I did," she said calmly, "I'll take care of it." There was no bravado in her voice, just fact. Sam leaned back, studying her anew. Whoever she was, she'd seen some things, and she wasn't about to let them beat her. "Well," he said, "if you're staying, I've got rules. Don't touch the shortwave. Don't go through the locked cabinet. And don't bring trouble through my door without warning me first." She gave a slight nod, then added, "Same goes for you." Sam grinned, despite himself. Fair. They sat in silence again, but it felt different now. The wariness had thinned, replaced by something less defined. Wary respect, maybe. Mutual recognition. Eventually, Sam stood and stretched. "Bedroom's yours," he said. "I'll take the couch. I've slept worse places." "I don't doubt it," he said. "But tonight, you don't have to." Riley rose slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, and walked past him. At the doorway, she paused. "I appreciate it," she said, voice soft. He nodded. The door shut behind her, and Sam sat back down. He stared at the flames, feeling the weight of a night that had shifted his quiet world off its axis. There was something dangerous about Riley, more than the gun, more than the lies. She wasn't just hiding. She was planning, waiting, maybe, even hunting, and whether he wanted it or not, he was part of the game now. Outside, the storm was gone, but trouble had already walked through the door. The morning sun broke through ragged clouds, casting weak light into the cabin. The storm had passed, leaving the world outside, washed clean but eerily silent. Inside, the smell of coffee filled the air, strong and bitter. Sam's way of waking up when sleep was reluctant. Riley sat at the small kitchen table, her fingers wrapped around the steaming mug, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the window. Her wet coat hung over the back of a chair. Still dark with yesterday's rain, Sam placed 2 plates on the table: eggs, toast, and thick slices of bacon. He sat opposite her, watching her with quiet curiosity. She hadn't said much since the storm broke, and for once, the silence felt different. Less tense, almost fragile. "Sleep well?" Sam asked, breaking the stillness. She took a slow sip, then shrugged. "Enough. Anything you want to talk about?" Her eyes finally met his, sharp and wary. "Not yet." Sam nodded, not pushing. He had a feeling whatever story she carried wasn't one you told over breakfast. There was a long pause before she added, "I'm not just running from someone. I'm running from something." He raised an eyebrow. "From a life I tried to leave behind. A name I tried to bury." Sam's fingers drummed the wooden table. "Names can be dangerous." She gave a bitter laugh. "Especially when someone's trying to find you using it." The fire crackled in the stove, filling the room with warmth. Outside, birds had returned, cautious and quiet. Sam knew that look in her eyes: regret, maybe even guilt. But beneath it, there was steel, a will to survive. "So why come here?" he asked. "Why this place?" She looked away, tracing a crack in the table with her fingertip. "Because it's far enough off the grid. Because no one knows me here, but now they do." She nodded. "That's the problem." The cabin door creaked open suddenly, making them both look up. It was an old man, bundled in a thick coat, with eyes like chipped glass. He carried a folded newspaper and a wary smile. "Morning, Sam," the man said, his voice rough but familiar. "Got some visitors asking questions about a woman seen near your place." Sam's heart sank. Riley's hand moved toward her gun, but Sam raised a calm hand. "Let them talk." The man unfolded the paper, pointing to a grainy photo. "Seen her?" Riley's face tightened, but she forced a nod. "Yeah." The photo was old, grainy, but the eyes were unmistakable. Sam could feel the weight settle deeper in his chest. Whoever was looking for her had started asking around town? They wouldn't stop. Riley reached into her coat slowly, pulling out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to Sam without a word. He opened it carefully. A hastily drawn map. Some names crossed out, others circled in red. "This is why I'm here," she said quietly. "Because they're coming, and I need to find them before they find me." Sam folded the paper and looked at her. And what, if they catch you first? She smiled, then a real smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then I'm ready. The storm was gone, but the real trouble was just beginning. The small town nearest to the cabin stirred to life under a reluctant sun, its streets still wet from the storm's last tears. Sam and Riley stepped out together, though an invisible distance stretched between them. She moved with the grace of someone who had learned to disappear, but today, she was walking straight into the eye of the storm. Sam carried the folded map she'd given him the night before, tracing the scribbled names with his eyes. Most of the markings pointed toward the east, the direction where the old railway yard and abandoned warehouses lay. Places forgotten by most, but perfect for secrets. We shouldn't stick around too long, Riley said, her voice low and sharp. They're watching. Sam nodded. He wasn't in the mood for small talk anymore. This woman had thrown his quiet life into a wild game of cat and mouse, and if she was right, the hunters were closing in. They slipped into a local diner, the kind of place where everybody knew everybody, and questions came cheap. Coffee, black, Riley ordered. She kept her eyes scanning the room, noting exits and the faces that lingered too long. Sam watched her carefully. You're good at this? I have to be. A waitress dropped off their orders, throwing a curious glance at Riley's damp coat and the faint scent of gun oil. Looking for someone? She asked, casually. Riley's eyes narrowed just slightly, but she answered smooth. Maybe. Someone who doesn't want to be found. Sam took a slow sip of his coffee, feeling the bitter warmth spread. The waitress moved on, but the question hung in the air. After they left, Riley pulled out her gun, checking the chamber like it was second nature. Who are they? Sam asked. She looked him dead in the eye. People who think I know too much. Too much about what? About the kind of power that can ruin lives. Sam frowned, but before he could ask more, Riley pulled out her phone, a cracked screen, and made a call. Yeah, she said quietly. I'm in. No sign of them yet, but I don't like this. She hung up and looked at Sam. They're closer than I thought. Sam felt a chill. The storm might have passed, but a darker one was gathering. Back at the cabin, the fading daylight cast long shadows through the worn wooden walls. The air was thick with unspoken tension, and Sam could feel the weight of Riley's guarded silence pressing down on him. She moved deliberately toward the small locked cabinet near the fireplace, the one Sam had told her not to touch. But tonight, the unspoken rules shifted. Sam, she said quietly, I need to look inside. He hesitated. I told you, that cabinet's off limits. Her eyes flashed with a mix of desperation and resolve. If I'm going to stay and fight this, I need to know what's here. Reluctantly, Sam fetched the old iron key from a hidden hook near the door and handed it over. Riley's hands shook just slightly as she unlocked the cabinet door. Inside were old files, worn notebooks, and a battered leather box. She opened the box slowly, revealing a collection of photographs, passports, and several small, unmarked envelopes. Sam watched as her fingers trembled, picking up a photograph of a man older with a hard jaw and cold eyes. That's him, she whispered. The one who started all this. He asked who. Riley's voice hardened. A man with too much power, and too little mercy. He thinks if he controls the story, he controls the people. She pulled out one of the envelopes and carefully unfolded the papers inside. Legal documents, coded messages, and a name crossed out in red ink. I was part of it once, she said, voice barely audible, but I left. I tried to disappear. They don't want me gone. Sam felt a surge of protectiveness he hadn't expected. This wasn't just a fugitive story. It was a dangerous game of shadows, lies, and power struggles. We'll figure this out, he said firmly. Together. Riley looked at him, a flicker of something close to hope in her eyes. But outside, the wind picked up again, whispering warnings through the trees. The storm wasn't done with them yet. Darkness fell swiftly over the cabin, swallowing the forest outside in black velvet. The only light came from the flickering fire and the faint glow of a lantern on the kitchen table. The atmosphere had thickened in ease, electric. Sam sat across from Riley, watching as she carefully pieced together information from the documents she'd retrieved. Her fingers traced lines of faded text, connecting dots only she seemed to understand. The weight of her past pressed down on the room like a heavy fog. Suddenly, a sharp knock at the door shattered the silence. Both of them froze. Sam reached for the pistol. He kept hidden beneath the table while Riley's hand instinctively hovered near hers. The knock came again, more urgent this time. Sam moved cautiously to the door and peeked through the peephole. Two men stood just beyond the porch, faces partially obscured by the shadows of their hats and the dark night. "Who are they?" Riley whispered, tense. "No idea," Sam said. "But they're not here for small talk," the men called out from the porch, their voices cold and firm. "Sam Raynor, we need to talk." Sam's jaw tightened. He didn't recognize the names they used, but the threat was clear. Riley stood slowly, the pistol now fully in her grip. "They're here for me." Sam stepped aside and opened the door, keeping his eyes sharp. "We're not here to hurt you," one of the men said. "We just want answers." "Answers?" Riley scoffed, voice edged with bitterness. "You've been chasing me for years." The men exchanged glances. "It's bigger than you think," the other man said. "And now you're tangled up in it too." Sam realized then that the world Riley had run from was catching up to them both. And fast, without warning, the men lunged forward. Sam and Riley fired simultaneously, the crack of guns echoing through the night. In the chaos, Riley ducked back inside, slamming the door shut. Breathing hard, Sam barricaded it with a heavy chair. "We can't stay here," Riley said urgently. "They'll come again. We need a plan?" Sam nodded, adrenaline sharpening his thoughts. Outside, the night was alive with danger, and trust was their only weapon. Dawn was breaking when Sam and Riley slipped out through the back of the cabin, moving silently between the trees. The early light painted the forest in soft golden shadow, but there was no peace in the air and lie, the cold edge of danger. They had no time to waste. The map Riley had given Sam burned in his pocket like a secret threat. It led them to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, the place Riley had circled in red. "This is it," she said, voice low but steady. "Where it all started. Where it has to end." Sam scanned the building's cracked windows and rusted metal doors. The silence was heavy, but beneath it, he felt the pulse of something waiting to strike. They moved inside, careful and quiet, every step measured. The warehouse was cavernous and dark, lit only by the morning light, streaming through broken panes. Shadows clung to the corners like ghosts. Suddenly, footsteps echoed from the far end. "We're not alone," Riley whispered. Figures emerged from the gloom, men in dark suits, faces unreadable but eyes sharp as knives. The man from the photograph, the one Riley had called him, stepped forward, older than the photo suggested, but just as ruthless. "You shouldn't have come," he said, voice cold. Riley squared her shoulders. "I'm here to end this." A tense silence followed. Then chaos erupted. Shots rang out. Sam and Riley moved, as one fire movement, survival. Bullets kicked up dust and debris. But the fight wasn't just physical, it was a war of truths. Riley confronted the man, accusing him of all the lies, the betrayals, the broken lives. He sneered, but his calm cracked. The power he wielded was fragile, built on fear. In a final moment of clarity, Riley revealed a recording she'd kept hidden, a confession from the man himself, exposing the crimes that had ruined countless lives. The men faltered. Sam saw the change, the shifting of power. The police sirens wailed in the distance. Backup had arrived. Riley turned to Sam, exhausted but victorious. "This is just the beginning," she said. Sam nodded. "Then let's make sure it's the last chapter." For them, as they walked out of the warehouse into the rising sun, the storm behind them was finally over. But the secrets Riley carried, they were hers to bear, and her chance at freedom.